The 15th of March, 1939, Prague. German troops march through the streets of the Czechoslovak capital as snow drifts in the air. Columns of tanks and armored cars grind over the cobblestones, while German soldiers in field grey uniforms keep step to the sound of boots and bands. Crowds of Volksdeutsche, the ethnic Germans, cheer as swastikas are hung from balconies and windows. Some Czechs watch in silence, others with tears or clenched fists, as the Nazis took over Prague Castle, historical seats of Czech kings, and the last fragments of their republic are swallowed by the Reich. Across Germany, newsreels show the spectacle of another bloodless triumph. Crowds in German cities celebrate what they see as proof of Hitler's genius, and another victory over enemies of Nazi Germany won without war. Britain and France protest weakly but do not act, and the Führer's confidence grows. Yet, not everyone is convinced. Among Germany's generals, one man warns that these triumphs are illusions, that Hitler's reckless path will one day bring catastrophe. Months before, when his colleagues refused to oppose Hitler's plans for Czechoslovakia, he had resigned from the highest military position in protest, rather than bear responsibility for disaster in the future. His name is Ludwig Beck. Ludwig August Theodor Beck was born on the 29th of June, 1880 in Biebrich, then part of the German Empire. His hometown is today part of the city of Wiesbaden. He came from a respectable German family. His father, Ludwig Beck, was an industrialist, and the Beck family valued discipline, patriotism, and education, qualities that marked Ludwig's upbringing. From an early age, he showed both ambition and a quiet seriousness. After graduating in Wiesbaden in 1898, Beck joined the German army. He served in the city of Strasbourg and soon graduated from the war school in Nysa, today's Polish Nysa. In the years before the start of the First World War, he was assigned to various military courses and schools where he enhanced his military and technical knowledge. Between these assignments, he was also active in his regiment in Strasbourg and Saarburg, cities near the present-day German-French border. From March 1912, he was assigned to the General Staff in Berlin, to which he was also transferred with effect from October 1913. By the outbreak of the First World War in the summer of 1914, Beck had already shown promise. During the conflict, he continued to serve on the General Staff, the nerve center of German military planning, and was also employed in various positions on the Western Front. He gained experience in both operations and administration, and he earned the respect of his superiors. Like many of his generation, he experienced both the pride of early victories and the devastation of ultimate defeat. Germany's surrender in November 1918 and the collapse of the Kaiser's empire left Beck and many others determined to preserve the traditions of the army. The Treaty of Versailles that followed imposed strict limits. The German army was reduced to 100,000 men, conscription was abolished, and the General Staff was formally dissolved. Yet, in practice, Germany's leaders maintained a secret military structure, and in many cases, officers and soldiers of the reduced army were connected to radical groups in German society, primarily the Nazis. Beck stayed in this reduced force, continuing to study tactics and doctrine. For him, the officer corps was the true backbone of the nation, and he believed it should remain above politics. This principle would be tested repeatedly in the years to come. First, in 1930, when Beck was a leading defense witness at the trial in Leipzig of 3 junior officers of the Reichswehr, the German armed forces. The 3 men were charged with being members of the Nazi Party, but members of the Reichswehr were forbidden from membership of political parties. The three officers admitted their membership and used as their defense the claim that Nazi Party membership should not be forbidden to military personnel. When the three officers were arrested after being caught distributing Nazi literature at their base, Beck, the commanding officer of the unit to which the three officers belonged, was furious, and even described the Nazi Party as a positive force in German life, and proclaimed his belief that the Reichswehr ban on Nazi Party membership should be abolished. Throughout the time of Weimar Germany, Beck rose steadily in the Reichswehr. His main passion was military theory, and in 1931 he was part of the group which published the Operation Manual of the German Army. This manual helped Nazi Germany in their victories during the Second World War, and the revised version is still in use to this day. When Hitler became Chancellor in 1933, Beck, like most officers, accepted the new regime, and even wrote in reaction to the Nazis gaining power, "I have wished for years for the political revolution, and now my wishes have come true. It is the first ray of hope since 1918. In his reaction, it is evident that the army had little love for the democracy of the Weimar Republic, and many officers hoped that Hitler would restore order after years of political turmoil. Beck was no Nazi, but he supported rearmament and the revival of military prestige. In 1933, he was promoted and became the last chief of the Truppenamt, the disguised successor to the banned German General Staff. This made him one of the most important figures in rebuilding Germany's military power in the first years of the Nazi regime. In July 1935, he became the chief of the General Staff, which was recreated in direct breach of the Treaty of Versailles. In his high position, he advocated a level of military spending beyond limits even those considered by Adolf Hitler. In his view, once Germany would be sufficiently rearmed, it should wage a series of local wars that would establish Germany as Europe's foremost power and place all of Central and Eastern Europe into the German sphere of influence. This was also the reason of his disagreement of Hitler's reckless foreign policy, which was leading, in Beck's view, Germany into another large, if not directly global conflict. The problem was not the war, but the fact that Germany was not ready for it. In 1938, his concerns reached a climax. Hitler planned to attack Czechoslovakia, believing Britain and France would not intervene. Beck strongly disagreed. He believed that the army was not ready for a broader European war, and warned that such a conflict could not be won. In a series of memoranda, he argued that Hitler's policy and overall strategy would bring ruin to Germany. He tried to persuade other generals to stand with him in opposition to Hitler's war plans. Beck hoped for a united officer corps confronting Hitler and forcing him to change the course of the foreign policy. But he was alone. Most of his colleagues were unwilling to act. Some were enthusiastic Nazis celebrating previous victories such as the Anschluss of Austria in March 1938, and others feared that any kind of opposition or resistance would break army unity or cause civil war in Germany. Faced with their refusal, Beck resigned on the 18th of August 1938. In his letter, he wrote that he could not take responsibility for policies he believed disastrous. His resignation was extraordinary. Few dared to oppose Hitler openly, and Beck's act marked him as one of the first senior officers to break with the Nazi regime. After leaving office, Beck withdrew into private life, yet he remained in contact with other conservatives and a handful of army officers who distrusted Hitler. As Hitler's aggression continued, this circle began to consider more drastic measures. Beck, with his reputation for integrity, became a moral center of their discussions. When the Second World War broke out on the 1st of September 1939, Hitler's armies won a string of victories over Poland, and the next year they won, among others, also over their historical enemy, France, in just 6 weeks. Many German officers were impressed by the speed of conquest. But Beck remained convinced that Germany was headed toward catastrophe. He believed that the combined might of Britain, the Soviet Union, and eventually the United States would crush Germany during the war. By 1942, as the tide of war began to turn, Beck became more directly involved in conspiracies to overthrow Hitler. He was a central person to the secret meetings among military and civilian opponents of the Nazi regime. The conspirators saw him as a figurehead who could lead a provincial government once Hitler was removed. By 1944, Germany's position was rapidly deteriorating. The Red Army advanced from the east, while the Allies prepared for the invasion of France. Inside the Wehrmacht, the armed forces of the German Reich, doubts about the Nazi regime spread. Officers who had once supported Hitler now feared the total destruction of Germany. The conspirators concluded that only Hitler's death could open the way for peace. On the 20th of July, 1944, Oberst Claus von Stauffenberg placed a bomb in Hitler's headquarters, the Wolf's Lair, in East Prussia. The explosion killed and heavily injured people in the room, but Hitler survived with only minor injuries. The plot to kill Hitler, overthrow the Nazi regime, and sign a peace treaty with the Allies failed. By the night of the 20th of July 1944, Beck was in the custody of Generaloberst Friedrich Fromm, a fellow conspirator, who after the failed assassination attempt had tried to save himself and was active in arresting the resistance fighters in the army ranks. The 64-year-old General Beck requested permission to keep his private pistol with the intention to kill himself to avoid torture by the Gestapo. Shortly after midnight, on the 21st of July 1944, he attempted suicide, leaving himself gravely wounded. Witnesses said he remained conscious, gravely wounded, until a fellow officer delivered a final shot, an act seen as carrying out the execution that awaited him anyway. Beck's death marked the tragic failure of the 20 July plot to assassinate Hitler. Hundreds of conspirators were arrested and executed in the following weeks. For many Germans, the resistance remained invisible, overshadowed by Nazi propaganda that portrayed the plotters as traitors. Yet in time, Beck's role came to be seen differently. Beck's body was buried in the Old St. Matthew's Cemetery in Berlin-Schöneberg. Shortly afterwards, his body was exhumed by the SS, burned in a crematorium, and his ashes scattered in Berlin's sewage fields.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.